Did the Supreme Court today allow cow slaughter in Tamil Nadu? Let's understand this topic in great detail. But first up, what is the context? On May 27, Madras High Court had issued an order directing the Tamil Nadu government that you should impose a complete ban on cow slaughter in the state. Tamil Nadu government approached the Supreme Court, and today's Supreme Court stayed this order. On what grounds did the Tamil Nadu government approach the Supreme Court? The government said that in our state we have a law titled Tamil Nadu Animal Preservation Act 1958. This particular law does not prohibit cow slaughter. Instead, it regulates cow slaughter. How? If a cow is above the age of 10, but the cow is unfit for breeding or for any productive use, then we can slaughter the cow. Similarly, the government told the court that there is a parliamentary law called Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1960 and the rules made under this law. Similarly, there is another law of Tamil Nadu Urban Local Bodies Act 1998, and the rules made under this law. Long story short, all these laws do not impose a blanket ban on cow slaughter. Instead, cow slaughter is regulated, which means where do you slaughter? How do you slaughter? In enclosed spaces, not in full public view, because that would be against the morality of the society. Tamil Nadu government told the Supreme Court that the order delivered by the Madras High Court on 27th of May, it amounts to judicial lawmaking. It amounts to judicial legislation. Now, judicial legislation as a term, this is oxymoron. Both cannot go together. There is something called separation of powers, where laws will be made by the legislature, executive will implement these laws, and the job of the judiciary is to keep a check on the legislature and the judiciary to ensure that the laws are not violative of the constitution. And if the Madras High Court has directed the Tamil Nadu government that you should impose a complete ban on cow slaughter in the state, that would be violative of the laws on this subject enacted by the state legislature as well as the parliament. The Madras government, the Tamil Nadu government, told the court that we have taken necessary steps, that we will not allow the slaughter of animals in public places, in full public view. We will ensure that any animal sacrifice, if it is done, would be permitted only in enclosed spaces far away from public view. This is what the law tells us to do. This is what the law mandates, that there is no blanket ban on cow slaughter. Instead, the cow slaughter needs to be regulated. Where are you slaughtering the animals? How are you slaughtering the animals? You should ensure that minimum cruelty is permitted in this case of cow slaughter or animal slaughter. But the petitioner had argued before the Madras High Court that during Bakri Eid, which is the festival of Muslims, the government is allowing temporary sheds where animals are slaughtered. Temporary sheds are not those permitted spaces which the law allows the government. So there are permitted enclosed spaces clearly delineated by the government where animal slaughter could take place. But during Bakri Eid, if you set up temporary sheds or if you allow the public to set up temporary sheds where the slaughter will take place, this is not according to the law, because there should be enclosed spaces, permitted spaces, separate spaces for cow slaughter or animal slaughter. This topic becomes very important because it involves fundamental rights, directive principles of the state policy, as well as fundamental duties. Together, very important topic for the civil services examination. And if you're preparing for the civil services examination, Unacademy has decided to lower its subscription fee. Now you can prepare for IAS at 16,999 with some important improvements in our offering, which is if you are subscribing to our UPSC course for 2 years, because normally it takes 2 years of solid, thorough preparation to prepare for this exam and clear this exam. If you enroll with us for 2 years, and you are clearing the prelims examination, just prelims, you will get 100% refund. However, if you are unable to crack the prelims examination, we will extend your validity of your UPSC subscription. So use this opportunity should you wish to prepare with us for your civil services examination. And while enrolling, ensure that you use this code IAS English so that you can get automatically tagged in the English batches of Unacademy. Look at the Constitution. Article 48 is a directive principle of the state policy. Now, these directive principles are not enforceable in a court of law, which means you can't approach the court and ask the court that you direct the state, direct the government or the parliament to implement directive principles of the state policy. So these DPSPs are not enforceable in a court of law. But Article 37 of the Constitution says it shall be the duty of the state to implement these DPSPs because these DPSPs are fundamental in the governance of the country. One such directive principle is Article 48. Now, listen to me carefully. There are some directive principles which are socialist in nature. There are some directive principles which reflect the ideology of Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhian principles. Then there are some liberal intellectual principles. But there are some directive principles which can come under both liberal intellectual principles as well as Gandhian principles. One such principle is Article 48. What does it say? It imposes a duty on the state that you have to take steps to organize agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. It's a liberal intellectual principle. But at the same time, you have to take steps to prohibit the slaughter of cows. And slaughtering of cows and its prohibition is a Gandhian principle. So, this Article 48 is the reflection of both liberal intellectual principle and the Gandhian directive principle. That's Article 48, which imposes a duty on the state that you should prohibit the slaughter of cows. Then we have Article 51, capital A, Clause G, which is a fundamental duty imposed on all the citizens of this country. And the fundamental duty is that we have a duty towards our environment to protect and improve our environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and have compassion for living creatures. If animals are slaughtered in an inhuman manner, this goes against the fundamental duty which is imposed on us by the Constitution. But just like directive principles, which are not enforceable in a court of law, fundamental duties also are not legal duties, which means you cannot approach the court and ask the court that you direct this individual to obey this fundamental duty, to perform this public duty, because this is not a legal duty. But fundamental rights are more important. And this is something that Supreme Court has said repeatedly. Under Article 25, you have freedom of conscience and freedom to profess, practice, and propagate your religion. There may be religions where animal slaughter is allowed, for example, Islam. So, if you are banning cow slaughter, or if there is a directive principle which directs the state, imposes a duty on the state that you should prohibit cow slaughter, but at the same time, there is a fundamental right which allows an individual to practice the religion. So, there is a clash between fundamental rights and directive principles of the state policy. In Tamil Nadu specifically, cow slaughter is generally prohibited, or should we say there is a regulated prohibition, not an absolute prohibition. How? Slaughter of certain cattle may be permitted in Tamil Nadu, which is that cattle. If this cattle is permanently unfit for breeding, if this animal is permanently disabled or suffering from some disease or is beyond the productive age, for example, more than the age of 10, in such circumstances, in such categories, cow slaughter, animal slaughter is allowed in Tamil Nadu. So there is no blanket ban on cow slaughter in Tamil Nadu, just like there is no blanket ban in Kerala. But there is a blanket ban on cow slaughter in UP, in Madhya Pradesh, various other states, particularly in the northern India. For that, we need to understand some important cases, such as Muhammad Hanif Qureshi, v. State of Bihar, 1958. The question before the court was, is a blanket ban on cow slaughter constitutional? Supreme Court said Article 48 is constitutionally significant because it imposes a duty on the state that you have to take steps towards cow slaughter prohibition. And if the laws against cow slaughter are passed in the state, this is constitutionally valid because you are upholding your duty under directive principles of the state policy. Number one. Number two, cow slaughter is not an essential part of Islam, which I'm going to tell you slightly later, but listen to me carefully. Complete ban on cow slaughter is constitutional, says the Supreme Court. But what is this essential religious practices? I told you that if you are an individual in India, you have a fundamental right to practice your religion because you have a fundamental right to profess, practice, and propagate your religion. While you are practicing your religion, you are following some of the rituals and practices of your religion. Are all these rituals and practices protected under Article 25? Supreme Court said way back in 1954 in Shurur Mutt case that only those practices which are essential to a religion are protected under Article 25, not non-essential practices. But what is essential to a religion, what is not essential to a religion, that courts will decide, that Supreme Court will decide. In such cases, the court asks, is this practice fundamental to your religion? For example, animal slaughter is allowed in Islam. The court will see whether this animal slaughter practice is it fundamental to Islam or not. In a sense, if we disallow animal sacrifice, does that mean the religion will collapse? And then the religion will have no meaning. When the religion will have no meaning, then what will happen to your fundamental right to profess, practice, and propagate your religion? Is this ritual or practice essential, integral to your religion? And would the religion fundamentally change if the practice were prohibited? Animal sacrifice is an important practice in Islam, but you can sacrifice other animals. For example, goat, for example, sheep, for example, camel. Is necessarily slaughtering a cow an essential religious practice in Islam? Supreme Court said no. Because Bakri Eid requires animal sacrifice, but not specifically cow sacrifice. So if you are allowed to sacrifice other animals, but there is only a blanket ban on the slaughter of cows, this is constitutionally permissible because it does not violate the essential religious practices of Islam. If you're slaughtering other animals, you are upholding your religion, you are practicing your religion, you are following the religious obligations. But if there is a ban on the cow slaughter, it does not violate Article 25 of the Constitution. Another important case, Abdul Hakim Qureshi, 1961. What was this case all about? Supreme Court said if you impose a total ban on the slaughter of bulls, bullocks, and she buffaloes, that would be against the interest of the general public. You can impose a complete ban on cow slaughter because Article 25 does not give you the fundamental right to slaughter the cows, but other animals can be sacrificed. If these other animals are beyond a certain age, they are not of their productive use, they are beyond their productive age, you can slaughter those animals. But if you impose a ban on the slaughter of such animals as well, that will not be in the interest of the general public. And as such, if you impose a ban on the slaughter of bulls, buffaloes, that is invalid. There is some constitutional tension. What will prevail? Article 48, which imposes a fundamental duty on the state, in a sense, imposes a positive obligation on the state that you have to take steps to prohibit the slaughter of cows. But on the other hand, you have Article 25, which talks about your fundamental right to practice your religion, and maybe your religion allows animal sacrifice. Plus, food choices. In K.S. Puttaswamy v. Union of India, a nine-judge bench of the Supreme Court in 2017 said right to privacy is a fundamental right. But Supreme Court also said right to choose your food is also a fundamental right, an integral part of your privacy, integral part of your right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. So if the state is upholding only a directive principle, but thereby there is a tension with Article 25, Article 21, watch what will prevail. Similarly, there is a fundamental duty to have compassion towards the living creatures. But on the other hand, you also have, as the citizen, a fundamental right to take up any occupation, any profession, any trade. And if there are some traders who trade in bullocks, she buffaloes, so on and so forth, other animals, they have a fundamental right to carry on trade and occupation in this area. So this is the constitutional tension. Then there is prevention of cruelty laws, that you have to ensure that cruelty towards the animals is minimized or obliterated. But on the other hand, there is a cultural reason also. Jallikattu, which is a cultural practice in Tamil Nadu, has been allowed by the Supreme Court, saying there is no animal cruelty in this case because sufficient safeguards have been put in place to ensure no animal cruelty. All these fundamental rights, directive principles, they do clash with each other. And Supreme Court has said in a landmark case, Minerva Mills, 1980, that relationship or harmonious relationship or balance between directive principles and fundamental rights is also part of the basic structure of the Constitution. Which means if you try to give more primacy to directive principles, thereby you will violate fundamental rights. This will not be upheld by the Supreme Court on the grounds that balance between or harmonious balance between directive principles and fundamental rights is part of the basic structure of the Constitution. What do you think of this issue and the constitutional tension surrounding this issue? Do let me know in the comment section. And thank you for watching. Good day. Have a safe time.